Commissioner Horton, whenever you're ready to go.
All right, I am all set. Thank you for almost being late here today. I do apologize for that. I had a business call that I got a little more in depth than, not that I should have, but it took a little longer than I thought. So I do have to apologize for starting late. I have actually 10 o'clock. So we'll start the meeting at 10 o'clock if everyone's all set.
Perfect.
I'll call the meeting to order. I'll call to the public. I see call to the public. I see a county commissioner other than Tobin in our picture. Jerry, is there anything you want to add, or are you just tuning in?
Nothing to add. I'm just observing the meeting this morning. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public available, Nicole?
No, Mr. Chairman, there is no other public at this time.
All right, hearing and seeing no other public, we'll move on to number 3. Consider accepting and placing on file the September 17th, 2020 routine personnel items as presented. Tobin, anything on this?
I see we hired an assistant public defender, Ashley McIntosh. Congratulations to her. And then other than that, a couple promotions for jail cooks and several step increases and 2 resignations.
Okay, yeah. So I see nothing out of the ordinary. I'm glad to see that public defender. Now, Margaret, did have they hired a chief public defender? I think, did they or did they not hire a chief? Do you remember?
No, we have not.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I seen it. And Tobin, interesting way to pronounce that. So you and I are different. I would say Macintosh. You would say McIntosh. Okay, that's good.
I wasn't sure.
I guess I'm in an Apple frame of mind today. This is my 3rd cup of coffee, just to focus that out for everybody. So yeah,
You're
And
probably
Tobin-
right.
I know
It's probably Macintosh.
no, and I know Tobin's not drinking coffee because you're probably like thinking of the pillow right now, aren't you?
I am. I am. I was on vacation, and then last night was my first night back on nights. So yeah.
He was in the UP last week on vacation, and sometimes they pronounce things differently than we trolls do. So that might be it.
That is probably true. So, all right, I'll make a motion to consider accepting and placing on file the September 17th, 2020 routine personnel items as presented.
And I'll support that.
Okay, motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. It will go forward. Next up, the grant agreement between the Michigan State Police and the Isabel County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Margaret or Nicole, you want to handle this one, or?
I assume Nicole's going to handle those too. Correct, Nicole?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
This is some of the CARES Act dollars coming down to us locally. In April, when these Department of Justice grants were first announced, we weren't eligible to apply. But in June, however, they made the county eligible, basically. And so this isn't a grant application where we could just come up with a project and apply for funding. They actually set allocations specific to eligible law enforcement and court agencies that could receive this money. And so our sheriff's office, our prosecuting attorney, and our trial court, all 3 were eligible to receive these funds, and all 3 had an allocation for them. The grant period actually runs through September 30 of 2021. And so this is a reimbursement at 100% of COVID-related costs incurred through next September 30. So even though not all of the funds have been requested through our applications yet, the funding still is there and up to those allocation amounts for those 3 agencies. So you'll see from the prosecuting attorney's office, we did end up applying for the whole $42,000 that was allocated to them. Mostly it was personal protective equipment, and they did purchase some laptops and some computers. If you can imagine, the whole remote instance for for coronavirus was necessary. So it makes sense to buy those laptops, but you think, why would they need desktop computers? They actually need something to remote back into. So the desktop is part of the remote situation as well. I know they're looking to get an iPad. They've been Zooming and they've applied to cover those costs as well. But the bulk of the money would be for prosecuting attorney who's looking at an increase when the court returns to more regular functions and jury trials. He's looking at what that's going to mean to his office and potentially bringing on a contracted attorney to handle some of that. None of these grant monies could be used for our staff, but they could be used for contracted workers. And so that's what prosecuting attorney came up with for potentially utilizing that. The sheriff's office, by and large, was mostly PPE for not just our jurisdiction, but throughout the county. Zoom subscription, web cameras, and those fun disinfecting lights that he bought that do such a good job in the jail. All you'll see here are the agreements for Sheriff's Department and prosecuting attorney. Trial court prepared and submitted their own application, although as I understand, it looks like that will be coming before the board for your approval before it is final. We do have until November 30th to get these executed agreements back to the state. So we've got plenty of time to get that in the system. But before you today are just the ones for Sheriff's Department and prosecuting attorney. It's a reimbursement grant situation. So we have to submit invoices and documentation that we've incurred the expense, and they cover those costs up to the amount of our allocation. So really, in order to accept this money, it is passed through from the federal government to the Michigan State Police, and then that's who our agreement is with, is Michigan State Police. Are there any questions about either one of these coronavirus emergency supplemental funding grants?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, yeah, certainly, Toby. Yeah.
just
Go
a
ahead.
technical thing, but on the CESF application for the prosecuting attorney, under project information and then under program narrative, in that first paragraph, it talks about hearings in 6 different court roommates. Kind of stuck out at me.
Court roommates.
Good
Yeah.
catch.
Yes. I wonder, yes, I bet they don't often refer to themselves that way. That's funny.
Probably not.
Thank you for pointing that out.
I didn't catch that either. That's
No.
a good catch. Good for you.
Court roommates.
Next time I saw David before the meeting, next time I see him, I'm going to ask him how his court roommates are doing. So
There you go. I imagine once they get back to normal, they're gonna be busy.
they will be busy. You know, and frankly, they're busy now on Zoom. But the jury trials have not started yet, unless they've started in the last few days that I'm aware of, anyways. And once that starts, they are going to be. That's why they need the contract person to come in, correct, Nicole, to help them once they start the jury trials.
That is exactly what that's anticipated for. Yes, ma'am.
You know, it was big news in Genesee County last week. I think they had their first jury trial in Genesee County last week. And you can imagine if we're going to be slammed with not having a jury trial since March, imagine what a county like Genesee County, so much larger, is going to be slammed. But I know that, you know, our chief judge and the judges and the court administrator and staff and the prosecutor, they'll all work that out. But you're right, they're going to be slammed. So that contracted attorney moving forward is going to be a good thing for us. And then we don't have any legacy costs with them. We just pay the hourly thing, and when we're caught up, we're done.
Yep.
Good idea.
Makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I have nothing. Good catch on that, Tobin. And well, as far as I'm concerned, 4 and 5 are actually pretty much the same thing, except they're different entities. So You want to go ahead and make the motion on 4 and I'll do 5?
Yes, I will make the motion that we consider approving the attached grant agreement between the Michigan State Police and the Isabella County Prosecuting Attorney's Office in the amount of $42,000 for federal pass-through coronavirus emergency supplemental funding, CESF, and authorize chairman to sign the same.
All right, I'll support that. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. By the way, seeing is messing up again on my system here, so I don't know if I have to switch to phone or not, but as long as everyone can hear me, I'm good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. It will go forward. Next up, why don't I make a motion and then if you want to discuss anything, we will on the next one. I'll make a motion that we consider approving the attached grant agreement between the Michigan State Police and Isabella County Sheriff's Office in the amount of $42,561.22 for federal pass-through coronavirus emergency supplemental training, CESF, and authorize chairman to sign the same.
Support.
All right, any discussion? Nicole and Margaret, you have anything to add on this one?
No, we're just fortunate to be able to receive these funds. So I commend the prosecutor and the sheriff's office and Nicole and my staff, who I'm sure have assisted with them. But it's a great thing coming back to our community. So good.
And the only thing I have to add is, Margaret, because I was rushed beginning, welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to see you, and I look forward to many more of these in the future. So,
Me too.
okay. Anything else to add? Anything else to add? All right. Hearing and seeing nothing else, I'll make a motion. I mean, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. All right. That'll go forward. Number 6, consider implementing the Siegel Waters proposed pay grade, job title, and annual salary. Margaret or Nicole, you want to handle this one?
Yeah, I'm going to handle it. I just, before I dive into the weeds, I just want to make kind of a blanket statement about a couple things. Number one, should the Board of Commissioners, the Finance Committee decide to move this forward, and should the Board of Commissioners at that recommendation make this action next week, then this study, this portion of the study will positively impact 172 employees in the trial court in the county. That will wrap up the entire classification compensation recommendations for all of our employees. Now, not all of those 172 employees are being reclassified, but because we're condensing the pay scale from a top out at 10 years to a top out at 6 years, as we did all the other ones, pretty much everybody will be touched some point. It might be large, it might be small, but pretty much everybody will be touched. The other thing I want to say, because again, if the presentation goes long and we start to get short on time, I want to make sure that the public record indicates the level of assistance there has been. You know, I sent a email or a text to Commissioner Horton yesterday, and one of the things I said in there is that within about 7 or 8 months of my joining the team here as the administrator controller almost 7 years ago, there were 5 things I recommended to the board at the time. And I can remember 3 of them off the top of my head because I've lived with them since then. One was that we had to do something with the jail facility because it had way outlived its useful life, and it was a liability and a risk concern for us, for our employees, for our inmates, for anybody else who was in there. And it was going to be a large effort and a very expensive effort, but it was something that we had to work towards. And the Board of Commissioners has worked towards that, and we are seeing the fruits of that labor. So the board should be very happy with that accomplishment. One of the other major things I recommended was that the organization had not had a classification system done since 1996, and that people's job descriptions, in their job descriptions, they were typing on Selectric 3 typewriters still. And that we were not competitive and we were not doing the best we could. And so I recommended that we perform or have that study performed, which we did. Moving forward here, you know, the Board of Commissioners has approved all the elected officials' offices within the last year. I think the presentations of how those went and looking at, you know, kind of quote unquote negotiating with all of the elected officials to make sure we had the information correct, to look at a couple of positions and go, oh yeah, well, the people doing the study kind of missed that. Let's look at what we can do for that. And then moving forward with this system, I have followed that same process. So what you're seeing in your packets now are very easily understood spreadsheets, which we initiated last fall with the prosecutor and the sheriff's office of, green means that there's a recommendation for an adjustment, financial adjustment. Red is that the Siegel Water Studies recommended that they be redlined and be regraded down, which I'm not recommending again. And yellow pretty much kind of stayed constant. So before I move into those, I just want to say this, that when we move forward with this, one of the issues is that when there's new positions, so let's say that a department head or an elected official's office receives a grant, and that grant has a new position in it. What's happened in the past is that they haven't been classified uniformly. So somebody says, oh, I'm getting $100,000 for this position, and this person's going to do this, and so that person needs to be a whatever manager. Well, not every position needs to be a management position. Not every position. Some positions should. Not everyone should. Every clerical position, every file position, every administrative assistant position, every social worker system. Are there some consistencies across our entire organization? And I think that classifying in the future by utilizing the tools that are part of the study, which you haven't particularly seen, but all the department heads who were here, all the elected officials were here, and the courts were here. We all did these job description questionnaires, and we also did what's called the GEM, which is the job evaluation manual that the supervisors did. So now you look at those things and you put them together and you work them through the system, and you end up with a pay grade for people. And that's the system that I utilized when we hired the new, and I worked with the sheriff on where are we going to categorize the new assistant jail administrator. How are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? So we worked through that system, and that's how we figured out a pay scale for that position. I worked through the same system for the deputy administrator controller position. So as we get new positions, it is not hard to work through the system. Administration will work with all the department heads, elected officials, and courts to do that. But that will keep us from getting everything out of whack and out of skew. One of the things that I talked about with the consultant when they did the study, and all the department heads, most of the department heads who have larger departments and the courts or whatever, we kind of agreed that there needed to be a uniform classification. So when you look through these, you'll see that, in some departments, there's an administrative assistant 1, and some there's an administrative assistant 2, and some of them is administrative assistant 3. Kind of the same thing where there's file clerks at different levels. There's deputy clerks at different levels. Those are all consistent with what are the requirements of the job to be considered as eligible to be considered for that job. So what do you have to bring to the job as an employee? And then once you're employed, what do you have to do? And what's the level of responsibility and authority and risk and all those things? So I would say this before we jump into the weeds here. I don't think we're in a position of looking at every single, and we can look at every single spreadsheet, but if we're going to start looking at, well, maybe that should be an administrative assistant too. I'll tell you, this has been vetted and vetted and vetted. I can't tell you how many meetings I've had with the chief judge and the court administrator before I went out with my medical situation. We had met routinely. We had agreed to what we were going to recommend moving forward. And then in the last 3 weeks, when I have been working remotely, I have had numerous discussions with Chief Judge James and with the court administrator. And last week or the week before, the court administrator and I were going through a spreadsheet position by position. We had names attributed to them to make sure that we had everything right, because we don't want to get into here and go, oh, well, that was not what we meant. And I've had Zoom meetings with every department head. The week before last, I went through every one of the recommendations, the suggestions, whatever. You'll notice as we're going through and we go through my staff report that there's a few times that the study recommended an increase for some positions. We're not recommending that moving forward because we just think they missed it. There were a number of things that, frankly, points here and there, data, information, or whatever. And there were some issues that just didn't come through, even though we felt that we had done our due diligence to get that known. As we get into the community development, we're looking at doing inspectors 1, 2, and 3. based on state requirements. You look at Parks and Recreation, the seasonal employees at Park and Recreation were never on the pay grade. This will be putting them on the pay grade scale. And we're looking at gate attendants 1, 2, and 3, and we're looking at park rangers 1, 2, and 3. If you're going to be a gate attendant at Deerfield, that's not quite the same responsibility, authorities, and as many people involved as there are to be a gate attendant at Coldwater, for example. So, and some of these departments, we're not looking at, you know, how many gate attendant 1s are there, 2s or 3s. We're looking at getting those positions on the pay grade so that we can be competitive amongst ourselves, and we can make sure that people are doing same level of work, are getting the same level of pay, but also we want to be competitive in the seasonal market. And our biggest competition in the seasonal market is our friends, the city, just because we're all looking for summer staff. So with that, I just have a couple more things to say, and then we'll dive into it. I really want to thank the department heads, all of our employees, the court employees, Judge Janes, and the court administrator. We have worked long and hard on this together. There's a letter in the packet from the judge supporting the recommendations that are going forward. He has been an absolute joy to work with. I can't say enough how true that is. Carrie has worked very diligently to make sure. That's a big organization. We want to make sure we have everything right. So we've worked very well together. The department heads, you know, I've met with them numerous times. We met within the last week and a half. But I also want to point out 3 of my team members in my department. I want to thank Nicole for putting together the PowerPoint presentation in February of 2019 that kind of kickstarted the whole thing. She did a great job of getting 1,000 points of information put together in some consistency. So that was great. I want to recognize and thank Jessica Jawazowitz. She has been living this with me since day one, and day one was a long time ago. And I have my mask on because Jessica's across the table from me and Melissa's down at this end, so that's why we have our masks in. But she's been living with this with me for a long time, and you know, has seen different iterations of things and has helped tremendously, and has a great idea of how the job descriptions work and the GEMS work. So I can't say enough that, you know, without Jessica, we might be in the woods, in the weeds, certainly. And then I want to thank Melissa Franquist, my staff accountant, who's at the other end of the table here too, wearing masks. She and I, and I'm not exaggerating, and I can tell a good story occasionally, but I am not exaggerating. I'm going to guess that in the last 2 weeks, Melissa and I have had at least 50 calls between the two of us, making sure that what I am bringing you today is the final product, and it is correct, and I'm comfortable moving it forward. So I think we're in a good place. Now, I can do a couple things. I can go through the staff report and we can talk about every department. And if you would like to do that, I am happy to do that. I am prepared to do that. If you looked at some of these and you go, oh, nope, I'm fine, I understand it, that's fine too. I want to do what the Finance Committee is comfortable doing so that Tuesday we can wrap this up, hopefully. So would you like to have me go through the staff report and talk about every department, or what would you like?
Tobin, what would you like?
Um,
Because I'm indifferent. I am, like I said, if I can just quickly be brief. Margaret, I think this, you know, I initially had some hesitations, and I still a little bit do. But I think what this does is this sets the county up for it. You use one of the terms, competitiveness. I think this sets the county up for competitiveness, and also I think it introduces competency into this. So I guess competency is not a great term. I'd like to use probably a little more stronger term, but that's what I came up with after 3 cups of coffee. So competitiveness and competency is, I think this sets the county up, and I think as a legacy issue for county commissioners, I think this is important because as we go forward as a county, knowing some of the costs and knowing how people are going to be hired in and everything structural wise is very important. So I don't have much to add to this. I think it's very thorough. I think it, you know, Tobin, I'm going to defer back to you again. So if you have any questions,
it's pretty thorough. And Margaret, I don't know if we need to go down through every department. You can touch on what you want to. have a comment reading through the staff report on page 2 under administration. It says accept the recommendations, and then it talks about accept the job title for payroll and benefits. And I thought, well, we forgot the deputy administrator controller, but then I see that position is in the table in Schedule A.
Yes.
But I'm wondering if something should be added to that wording under administration, because it just says accept the recommendations. And maybe we should add and add the deputy administrator controller position.
Happy to do that. I think that, it's in the spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's, and maybe I can add, or I'm certainly happy to add that position there to clarify. I also think that maybe if it's not clear, that's what's in the spreadsheets is what the final recommendations are. Maybe I could put that someplace in here too, so we kind of blanket it on anything, just in case anything.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do whatever you would like to have me do about that, Tobin. How would you like that addressed?
I think both of those
Okay.
Suggestions would be a good remedy for that. And
Great.
then you could read the staff report and know exactly what's going to happen.
Okay.
Before you get to the table.
Great.
And I see we're increasing that about 75%, which has been our target with assistant positions.
Yes.
Compared to
I think
department
it depends. It depends on what tool you use to decide what percentage. One phone says it's 74%. One phone says it's one thing says it's 73, whatever. I've tried to get them to 74, which is what we talked about the chief deputies for the elected officials to be somewhere between, I think it was like 68 and 75. So out of the 6 elected official positions, I believe 4 of them are at like 74%. So that was where I was looking for, that certainly to me will keep us competitive in that position. If God forbid Nicole decided to go someplace else, like, all of our positions, we have to make sure we're ready for whatever might happen in people's lives and whatever determination they
We're not
make.
going to let her go anywhere else.
No, I don't want her to go anywhere else. No, I'm not saying I want her to go anyplace else. I'm saying that, I mean, what is the phrase like in football? If the running back goes down, next person up, they say next man up, but that wouldn't apply here. But, I think that it's very important that we keep a consistency there we did with most of the elected officials' offices. So yeah, I'm happy to add something about the the deputy administrator controller in the narrative. And I know that I had said in my recommendations about the trial court that due to the largeness of the department, that the spreadsheet was attached or whatever. And maybe I just need to say that starting with the departments too, so that there's a general statement in there that the spreadsheets are incorporated into the staff report. I think that might be better.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think-
that's a very good, those are both great ideas and I will do
Okay.
that.
And then the other thing I want to say is just, I'm glad, and I've said this before in the other reviews, that I'm really glad that we're not redlining positions.
Yep.
I think that's a disaster.
Yeah,
It's not worth what little bit of money that it might save because of what it creates. And I think sometimes, these studies kind of undervalue some of those jobs that are primarily physical labor. It's my opinion.
well, yes, and this study, as a matter of fact, recommended that our custodians be reclassified from 6 to 3s.
Mhm.
I mean, if let's look at COVID. What would any of us do without reliable custodians? I mean, you have to have that. And I'm not recommending that we redline any of the positions. I'm recommending that we don't increase them necessarily, up the pay grade. But I agree with you. I think there is an initial thought in some places that, well, redlining is going to save us money. Well, as you said, it might save a little cash, but the cost of the ill will and the morale and what that does to people and what that does to an organization, I just can't recommend that. And I know that we had talked about this earlier, Tobin, and Commissioner, and finance committees. And I was kind of silent on the issue to kind of feel out what other people were thinking, but I can tell you that Margaret McAvoy could not have made the recommendation to redline those positions. I couldn't do it. And I wouldn't be able to do that. You're right. I do think any compensation study sometimes undervalues a whole lot of positions. I'm hoping that we're not, I don't think we're doing that with this study. I think that we have made that decision because we're not redlining that. Hopefully that's not, I don't want people to feel that. I will tell you, I do think that in my meetings with department heads and with the courts and, immediately right up front, I said the first time the chief judge and I and the court administrator met last year to talk about this, I said to them, I will not be recommending redlining anybody, not going to do that. So I will tell you, once that came off the table, whether the board decided to do it or not, I didn't think you would do that, but once I said, I'm not going to recommend that. If the board chooses to do that, then I'll implement it, but I'm not going to recommend that. The entire discussion moved forward with everyone because nobody wants their people to be redlined.
Right.
So I will make a comment in my, I will adjust my staff report to put in the deputy administrator controller position in administration, and then I will make a blanket statement before I go into the departments that says the spreadsheets should be incorporated in this, attached spreadsheets are incorporated into whatever. And I will also tell you that my department, my staff, Melissa and Emma Nieport, who is our payroll and benefits administrator, have already started working diligently. So if the board approves this, we will be able to get this retroactively to April 1st as soon as possible. I will tell you, April 1st is not the beginning of a pay period. But I told my staff that before I left, I made the comment that I would hope that we would retroactive these to April. And although I didn't say April 1st, if I was an employee, what I would have heard was April 1st. So we're going to go ahead and make it effective April 1st as part of your motion, hopefully on Tuesday. And I have complete faith that Emma and Melissa will make that happen.
Margaret, I have a couple of quick questions, just to that I thought of as we were talking here. One, if you're going back to April 1st, is that going to be done on a lump sum, or how is that going to be paid out?
Yes.
Okay. Next question is, because one of these affects you, are we going to have to do a contract amendment, or how is that going to, or we don't, that's not necessary?
No, it's not necessary.
Okay, all right. So that was the first two questions that came to mind and just listening to the conversations. Yeah, I got Coben. Anything else?
No.
Margaret and Nicole, anything? Okay, I'll make a motion then to consider implementing the Siegel Waters proposed pay grade, job title, and annual salary as recommended for the trial court and county departments, and to implement any increased pay grades retroactive to April 1st, 2020.
Support.
I guess the only other discussion, again, sorry, I just thought of this as I was reading.
Okay.
How does this fall into our budgeted amount as far as, I think 2021, we've talked about having it already in the budget. And does this match up to what we approved for the 2020 budget amendment?
Yes, last week in one of the multitude of phone calls Melissa and I had, I think we're within about a couple $1,000s. Is that we still there, Melissa? Yeah, we're within $1,000 or $2,000 from what we budgeted to go back to April 1st. So Melissa did a great job on working on that with Emma and getting those figures correct. And again, every department head in the courts and elected officials are going to tell you they got the best and the brightest and the best team. I'm telling you, I got the A team, and they don't falter from any of these crazy things Margaret comes up with, like, well, let's go back to April 1st. What the heck? How hard can that be? So, bless them. But yeah.
Okay, I got nothing else. Tobin, you have nothing else?
No.
Okay, I'll make, all in favor of approving this, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. It will go forward. Next up, discussion, jail project funding. Who would like to start?
Are you discussing that, Nicole?
Absolutely. And I think Steve Kernovic is on as well. He's
yeah.
about to, yep.
Okay, yeah, I'm actually at my.
He's the man
office.
behind the curtain.
Yeah. I'm
How
at my-
this, are you there, Steve?
Yeah, I'm at my office today and so I don't have a webcam and my, I'm plugged into my laptop and I've got my nice 3 monitors. I'm looking here, I'm thinking, why is my picture not displaying? And because I don't have a webcam. So I apologize for that failure of my planning on technology, but I guess you can, unfortunately, have to at least hear me when I do speak.
That's all right, Steve. Do you have the spreadsheet that we need to share, or do you want me to share it on the screen?
Yeah, I've got it. I can.
You
do
should be able to
that.
share if you've got it. I just wanted to preface this. This came about from Commissioner Horton wanting, as chairman of finance, something brought forward to discuss the turbine revenues, to discuss the potential jail debt payment. And he even threw in there the MERS liability, because that is such an expense that we're going to have coming up over at least the next 18 or so years, based on the closed amortization schedule that we adopted with MERS on the defined benefit pension. So what Steve Kernovic has thrown up here, and I will let him take it away, is a spreadsheet of all of those things combined, what we might look at for jail debt payments, our MERS liability falling off after a few years, and utilizing turbine revenues and other combined with other revenues, because turbines don't get us there to pay for all of that.
Right, yeah. So
Steve, you're going to have to talk up louder or
Okay.
get your microphone closer to. Hi, Steve. I haven't talked to you
Okay.
in a long time.
hello.
Get your
Yeah.
microphone closer, and then eventually, would you do me a favor, please, and email me the spreadsheet so that I can
Yes,
have
ma'am.
that for the record, and also I can share it with our, email it out to our members.
Yep, absolutely. So is that better?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. You know me, I can talk loud, so
I know.
I'll just so I tried to take the information, like I said, from Nicole and pulled all this together and rough this out. I mean, this is, like I said, is rough. If there's things, like, I'm glad that we're sharing this. So if there's things I've, not taken into consideration or not thought of, this is the time to, kind of begin to have those discussions. And I don't know, I can try to, I don't know how well you guys can see that. I tried to make it a little bit bigger. I don't know if that helps.
I'm just having trouble because I'm a novice at Zoom. When you put it on the screen, everyone flopped to my right. So I'm only seeing up to 2033, which is fine. We can.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I'm only
yeah.
seeing up to 2033. So I'm just going to try to. Yeah, that's fine. I have a couple questions, but go ahead. I'm not going to interrupt to the very end.
No. So I tried to. So basically, kind of just starting at the top, and I'll just work through the logic. Took the turbine revenues based on information that was in the ground but not operating. Is that correct, Nicole? For 21, is that the right terminology?
That is the right terminology. Actually, that amount represents 84% constructed but not operational, not spinning.
Okay.
84% in the ground, which I will say, I believe it was a week ago that they poured the last foundation. So they really are moving.
Yeah. So in trying to project that revenue, we looked at that for 2021, and then as we moved into 2022 and forward, as you can see there, it's based on a calculation. This one is 2022 is at 100%. And then I don't know if you can see it, but if you can see the formula that's calculating up here based on that state of Michigan set amortization of those dollars, it goes down, and from there, and you can see there, percentage decrease it's form 4565 if you care, but that's the form, you know, and so it goes down each year from there, and it's not a systematic gradual. I mean, so as you look here, it went from 0.8 to 0.75 to 0.7. So it's kind of looks like it's a step, you know, perfect step, but then it drops to 0.6. and so it's not exactly a 0.05 decrease each year. Then it goes down to 0.5, 0.45, and you know, then it levels out after 2031 to, as you can see, 0.3. So it's a 30%, you know, and then that's what carries out for the rest of time. And so that's kind of the projection of the northern project of for turbine revenues. Then we go down to the next line is the jail debt payments. Looking at that, what we did was the municipal advisors, as it says down here, you know, they provided amortization schedules for the debt. And this is a 40-year debt amortization. So that was, I think, key to that was 40 years principal and interest, because I think they initially did, and Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like they did 20, 25, and 30 maybe were the initial kind of ones that they provided. And then, you know, and then they provided an additional one of 40 years. So,
That's correct.
you know, so then these carry out, you know, for, you know, as Commissioner Horton said, I mean, it goes way out 40 years, you know, it goes way out here to, you know, to the end, to 2061. You know, so those are principal and interest payments for each of your fiscal years based on, you know, the numbers across the top. So, you know, so looking at that, at least the first few years through 2025, you have, you know, a larger revenue coming in, property tax revenue from the wind turbines than actual debt payments. But as those payments begin to amortize and decrease, it flips on us, you know, and it goes to a negative situation. But we'll kind of work down these first couple years, and then we'll work across. I think might be the easiest to see. So that's kind of the change of those two new activities, either the overage or the shortage, based on time. Then we added the estimated MERS payments, and again, these were based on the MERS. Yes.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? Just clarify
Absolutely.
something. Maybe I don't understand something. I'm happy to say if I don't. But when you're talking about we end up in a negative spot in that area just above on whatever line that is, 10, we're actually in a very positive spot earlier on in this. So I don't want to leave the impression with the commissioners that there isn't, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's more cash up front,
Yes.
from the turbines and other areas to meet this requirement as we move on. So I don't want to leave something in the minds of the commissioners that, oh my God, in 2016, we're going to be in a negative and not be able to pay for jail construction or MERS, because I know that that's not what this says, but I wanted to clarify that for the Board of Commissioners members who are here.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's kind of this, if you look at the very bottom line,
Okay.
that's ultimately, you know, that was just those two. I kind of wanted to
Right.
segregate those and
Margaret, I'll say you and I are on the same wavelength. I think I panicked the last time this was presented. I go, wait a minute here. We're way in the negative. And they said, oh, you got to look at the bottom. I go, oh, okay. We're subtracting out from the bottom per year. So
Yeah, I wasn't panicking. I knew the fact. I just didn't want.
I was.
I didn't want you guys to panic. So yeah, you start to see those little parentheses around numbers. It does make you a little nervous, doesn't it?
There might be a reason for my late sign in today. So that's, you always panic when you try. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah,
So
we're good. Okay. Panic is low level.
Right. No, and no, that's understandable. We kind of trade that, you know, once we, you know, start looking at the MERS and the drop off of
Right.
MERS, it's kind of a flip there, and you know, we do have some years, lean years, but ultimately, like you said, we do, you know, have a positive situation, and ultimately, you know, a positive, you know, situation with the hopes of a new jail and MERS,
Right.
you know, extinguishment of those DB amounts. So yes, you're right, Margaret. You know, I mean, yeah, that ultimately this isn't, you know, a negative.
Right.
You know, it's kind of halfway through. It is.
I
So,
know.
no, good point. Very good point.
I think it's a
Oh.
good point to tell people not to go off the deep end at the beginning of the presentation, and then explain why that's true.
Right, yes, look at the whole picture, right? Yeah, absolutely. So, then we factored in the estimated MERS payments. And again, this is based on, as you can see here, estimated MERS payments are based on known amounts or estimated amounts provided by MERS. So if you know, when they came in and did their presentation, they provided a multitude, I think, of obviously the options, and you as a commission, you know, selected option 1 or option 2, whatever the option was. That's where these numbers were derived from. I think with the only exception of 2021, this is, as you can see by the little comment boxes, this was based on the 2021 budget. So we knew what that number was going to be. So we, you know, utilized that just because we knew actual for that estimate. This number here is for 2022, was based on, as you can see there, it's from the 2019 actuary study. The phase-in component of the actuary study, you know, so it goes from 1.4 million to 1.9 million. And then, you know, starting here, that's, I think, where it's, you know, based on the amounts that MERS has provided. And so, you know, as you can see, you know, again, those were estimates, but they were pretty reasonable estimates. I looked at the estimates that they had included for these initial years. This 1,916,000 compared to MERS number that they gave you over a year ago, was pretty close. I mean, it was within you know, I can't remember if it was 10 or so thousand. So I, you know, felt like these numbers, as we utilized what they included in their estimates, I felt pretty comfortable with those numbers because you know, 2022 was pretty darn close to what they had, you know, the actuary compared to what they had estimated. So, and as we work outward, that begins to decrease, you know, and as we get, and I'll scroll this over because I know you can't see it all. As you see, as we get out here, hopefully, if you can't see that, hopefully that's in the middle of your screen now. As we get out here to 2038, that's where it drops off, you know, so it drops, you know, substantially, and then eventually goes to zero because you'll be fully funded 19 years from now. And so I think that's, you know, that's kind of where those numbers are derived from. You know, one positive is I believe these numbers obviously they're pretty accurate, but I think they're probably conservative. I think that there will potentially be, you know, as you can see, you know, that it ended up being 1.4 and the estimate was 1.9. So I would envision, which I think is good, that they're higher and that they're estimated conservatively. So if we do have if each of these on an annual basis ends up being a different number, I think the expectation would be is hopefully that it will be a lower number. Will be the hope. So what I did from there is I again made some assumptions. Said, okay, if I know in 2021 we're paying 1.4 million for MERS payments, I said in theory, if we can keep that mentality, I guess maybe would be the right terminology, to say that, you know, we're going to make a similar payment each year going forward, that's a constant, you know, so as a variable, we're going to hold that, you know, that component of the analysis, we're going to hold that number constant. So, as we move forward, going into 2022, for instance, our constant would be as well. We know we can theoretically, we've built into the 21 budget 1.4 million, but we know we're going to have to come up with 1.9-ish million, going into 2022. So from what we did the year before to what our expectation will be for 2022, we have a, again, and you can't see me, but I'm using air quotes on shortage. We have a shortage there of that 495,000. So again, projecting that out, knowing that hopefully if we could at a minimum continue to pay, 1.4 million as we get out to, these older years out here further. Again, that flips, the table kind of flips there too, is that once in 2028, 8 years from now, 7 years and budgetary years, I guess, that table flips where we, if we're used to you paying 1.4 million, our payment goes down to a little under 800,000. So we have, an overage, in 2028 that we will, be able to utilize to pay for the jail payments, if you remember right up here. So so that's that projection of the MERS, holding the MERS methodology constant of that 1.4 million going forward. So again, this is kind of a, and maybe this should say subtotal, but that's kind of a subtotal there of this activity, the change of that activity, going forward into future years. So really, as we look at this, again, remember, just these activities, not taking into consideration your current operations and current operational, shortfalls or overages or whatever they may be, only taking into consideration, these activities of turbines, jail, and MERS. We look at this and basically what we've done and how we've laid this out is we've said, okay, well, this first year we have turbine revenue of $1 million. We have no debt payments yet. And these numbers are equal. So the quote, kind of the bottom line or accumulated amount is we're taking in $1 million of revenue that we aren't utilizing in the 2021 budget. And so as we've, shared those discussions with terminology on fund balance, and we've talked about the, the restricted and the committed and the assigned and so forth. We've concentrated more on those this past year or this past month, really. And we were discussing the concept of you as commissioners, will want to probably utilize, that commitment constraint on dollars to say, we know we're collecting these dollars, we're not having debt payments, so we're going to commit these dollars, this $1 million, a little over $1 million, to utilize for future either jail or MERS payments, and not use them to, for anything else. We're going to commit those dollars for future utilization of these payments, because how this accumulated overage works, again, I won't go into a lot of detail, but basically it takes that, if you're an Excel person at all, it takes that beginning number and it adds in our overage and our shortage to come up with kind of the accumulated number. So that's kind of conceptually how, the spreadsheet is working, that if we're committing dollars from the prior year, we're having a current year in 2020, we're having a current year surplus, and we're having a current year shortage in this activity. Those three numbers come to this kind of cumulative overage going forward, as we project out. Ultimately, the goal, as Margaret had pointed out, ultimately our goal is this bottom line, line 20, to be positive, and how do we, do that and to maintain, because ultimately these overages begin to dwindle, and we utilize those overages, and so as we get out here to 2026, again, remember, just for these activities, not for regular operations and so forth, there might be, depending on what happens, on current ongoings, related to, delinquent taxes and so forth, there will be a need for, utilization of funding to make this equation positive, I guess. And so, so we, have put that in this analysis in order to keep our bottom line at a positive situation. So like I said, there may be, again, depending on what happens here, and I won't go into a lot of details, but there might be utilization for other reasons prior to this, but for these activities only, there are dollars that will need to be, utilized to keep a positive bottom line on these activities. And that's a ton of information and a ton of numbers, and but I mean, that's kind of a not real brief overview either, but that's kind of an overview of what we tried to do on this analysis to project out where we will be in relation to these, activities, going forward, out until, like we said, until the bonds are fully amortized. As we can see, I mean, it's a structural shortfall when we get out here to the end. If you remember, this is the turbine revenue, until 40 years will be about 36 million. Structurally, the bonds will, principal and interest, will be roughly 63 million. So we have that structural shortfall of 26 million, and but I mean, we have some savings due to your actions of streamlining or the phasing in of the MERS payments. So I think that was a great decision on your part, because we can utilize some of those cost savings down the road to cover, and I hate to use that, I don't really like to use that word, but to utilize those dollars for future bond principal and interest. I know that's a ton of information, but I don't know. I mean, I can try to answer, and Nicole and I have worked through this, and I think our logic is on track and so forth. I know our numbers are good, as far as the support coming back from our numbers. But if there's any questions on how do we come up with this, and I tried to, as it says here, you can kind of see these assumptions. I tried to give you some information on how we got each line and that type of thing. So hopefully that is helpful also. But if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Tobin, I have a few, but if you want me to, can I go, or you want to go first, Tobin? It's your call.
I'll go first. Just a couple things. Steve, I really like the way you got this laid out. I like it a lot. That bottom total, I would have called it a running total, but not being an accountant, but I guess accumulated sounds better.
No, yeah, we could change that.
No, don't change it. I didn't understand it until you explained it, that it's, in my mind, it's a running total.
Yep.
But I like, just overall, I like the way we're really thinking about what we know now, our two biggest debts coming up will be the jail and the MERS. And to take that windfall, with the pun intended, and use it towards those two in a line per line, year per year, Makes a lot of sense to me and makes me feel a lot better about those debt obligations that we'll be incurring. And to kind of earmark that turbine revenue towards those makes a lot of sense to me. So that's all I have right now. So Commissioner Horton, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Just a couple quick housekeeping things before I delve into it. Just on the starting in 2021, Margaret's got me trained to talk in budget years. So is that 2021 would not be a budget year, that would be a calendar year. So would 2021 change to 2022 if we're talking budget years?
No, that is a fiscal year. So that
Okay.
was your fiscal year. And I mean, yeah, I could add, I mean, if that was, we could add.
I mean, we've already got 2021 out for our budget, correct?
Right,
So-
yeah.
So.
Yeah, we included that, and I think this is, I'm pretty sure, and correct me, I know you modified that number for the budget for 2021. I don't know how close that is. I mean, I know we started working on this, I don't know how close that is to your 2021 budget number, Nicole.
I think it's spot on, Steve. But I do want to point out, that we are utilizing that in the fiscal 21 budget. It was basically built in for operations as revenue. So what Steve is saying by saying that the commissioners need to commit that amount to the future debt payment of the jail is, even though we've built that specific amount into fiscal 21 operations budget, the board can still commit that amount from their fund balance and actually by board action, make a commitment that that's going to be used for jail debt payments. Now you say, how can we do that if we've built it in as revenue in fiscal 21 budget? But remember, a lot of those dollars, well, all of the dollars that we've been spending for the architects and the engineers to Clark Construction and Integrated Architecture, that's all coming back to us and will feed back into that fund balance once we get reimbursed for that after we initiate the bond process. We've done a budget amendment. I think there was six or 700,000 of jail payments to that point. We will be having this money come back to us through that bonding process for the jail. So even though we've built this turbine revenue into fiscal 21 budget as revenue, I think that the board can still commit this amount of the fund balance towards the future jail debt payment. And we'll see this come back to us through that bonding process.
Yeah, you and I had this discussion before. That was one of my biggest concerns as well. Did we account for the 900 or so thousand that we took out, or roughly that? And you answered that question. That's why I brought it up again. I just wanted to make sure. Now jumping into the actual document. Again, one of the biggest things with the revenues on the turbine Northern Project, and Steve, I think you touched upon it, but is our confidence in our numbers on that. You estimated that we are going with a conservative estimate. That's a good statement. And I also have talked to Nicole. One of my biggest concerns with anytime you use a project like this and put all your eggs in one basket pretty much on funding, is that what would happen if, for instance, a change in the tax structure changed. Nicole pointed out to me that she had experience in a county to our south, in Gratiot County, where that was an issue, and there was a lot of hammering on that taxes. And this is what we have currently now is probably what's going to be left forever. I don't think there's much to pick off left unless they totally do away with it. I mean, that's a risk. Let's face it. But at the same time, I mean, you look to our north and you see turbines. There's no denying that. Those are going to be there. And it's not like it's a whim. It's not like we're, putting estimates without seeing it. They are there. I can see them from my house. So they are there and they're going to stay there. So I am confident that the revenue will be there into some of the discussions. I do like the fact that we're looking at the board will have to look, and boards in the future will have to look at keeping those, because each board could come in and change. But I think we had talked about restricted or committed. I think that's the way to do it. Let's see here. I did have a question on the delinquent tax revolving fund, I think we're being extremely, and I'll say extremely conservative with those recommendations. There's a couple different ways we can go. I think I mentioned it, Nicole, and maybe even Margaret, I can't remember, or Commissioner or Chairman Green, in regards to I'm not going to get into anything as far as our legal situation right now with that. But, looking at some of the court statutes, the Rough Valley case, if we were to follow that, our at risk is not as great as the federal at risk. If they do that, then it doesn't, well, that would just be foolish if we had to follow the federal statute as far as payment goes. But at risk dollars on that, again, I think that's very conservative estimates. So I'm comfortable in that dollar amount. Again, I like this. I know Commissioner Jelezinski will probably add some stuff in the public comment section, but I'm glad to see this. This is kind of what I've anticipated, kind of what I like to see, is not only this year, not only 2 years, not only 4 years, but this is planning by the county commissioners, whoever over the next while, and this is what we're elected to do. This is what the people have elected us to do, is maintain. And so we don't continue to have these ins and outs, and allows our community to grow and have confidence. We've talked about other plans down the road. I'm not going to go into it today because it's not the proper term, but there are also drains on our budget that may be put to later use as far as the millage. We wanted to stay away from that, but the MRF is one example of something down the road that maybe we may have to look at as far as funding goes too. But this is a good overall plan. I really like this. I think there's confidence behind the numbers. I think they're conservative estimates. They're not pie in the sky numbers. I think they're reachable. It's just a matter of how committed boards are going to be in following this. And there you have it. I mean, I think I'm very confident in the numbers, and I'm glad to see this now. I mean, maybe we're missing something, I don't know, but that's my statement on it. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would just like to,
absolutely.
if I may, Steve, great job. I will tell you, yes, I'm confident in the numbers, but I'm more confident in Steve. So if Steve says those are the right numbers, I'm confident. I'm very thankful for him. It's a great report. Also, I would just like to comment back and kind of roll back to the MERS a little bit. The changes that you as the commissioners made with the recommendations from the Administrator Controller's Office based on my meetings with the then CEO of MERS, that was a great day that he called me on his way back from Traverse City on his way to Lansing and said, could I stop in and chat with you? I had never met him. We had talked on the phone, but he came in to chat with me. And in the end, the recommendation that came to you was the result of that and other discussions. And the decision the Board of Commissioners made on MERS has put us in a great position for years and years to come. And I think that I commend the board for doing that. The jail project, again, it's a necessary project. It's not a luxury. It's a requirement. The sheriff is required to have a jail. We're required to provide the jail. Our jail has to be provided for anyone who is arrested and brought to jail. Doesn't matter what jurisdiction in our county. And we have, as we know, 5 law enforcement organizations. And I think that, in my mind, I always felt that the combination between the turbines, eventual revenue, and what the board did with the MERS, the combination of that would be able to be utilized moving forward to pay off the debt for the jail and with the MERS. And obviously, Steve's information and Nicole's information and Steve's presentation, I think supports that. I'm glad to see it in black and white, glad to see the figures there, glad it's not just Margaret's imagination. So that makes me happy. And also, I think that the situation or the discussion about the delinquent tax fund is a discussion we'll have many times into the future. These are pretty conservative figures, and I have great confidence in having those discussions as we move into the future. And don't really care to have it any more in depth at this point, but this is great information, Steve. Nice job, and it's very well presented.
Thank you. Yeah, Nicole was very helpful once we, it took, that was a multiple rendition. I think it took a little while to get there, and I had multiple other lines, and it was even a little muddier than it was initially, and we kind of talked through some things and tried to boil it down to the, it's not simple. I mean, that's the thing, is it's not simple. So we had to provide the information and but try to make it as clear as possible, and so I'm glad that it was beneficial.
Chairman Horton dropped off for a moment, but he's joining us again.
Yes, I'm back in, I think. Let me put my
Yes, you
plug in. All right, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. I had to, once again, using the technology and go to my cell phone, so I can only see Nicole's face. I don't know how to do it otherwise here, so.
Sorry about that, Commissioner.
No. So Margaret, I'm sorry you broke up, so I didn't know if you finished or not finished.
Yes, I am finished. Thank you very much.
Just go, I don't have Steve's screen in front of me anymore, but Steve, if I recall looking at the screen, after a certain amount of time, what is our probability of maybe making early payments on the debt? I know that's going way out and talking about future use, but do we have an opportunity as a county to possibly make future payments on the long-term debt to pay that debt down sooner rather than later?
Are you talking about the jail debt or the MERS, or both?
Or the MERS debt falls off after a while, and then we
Right.
continue, I think, going to 1.4. Again, I'm going off memory on the screenshot, but I believe the 1.4 carries on. Where do we fall back, and do we have any room to pay off the debt on that?
Yeah, it does. We get out to about 2036. And then we do see and I can share again if you'd like, but if not, I mean, it's just about 2036. It looks like we kind of turn the corner where the MERS goes down to like 27,000, and so if you keep that mentality of that 1.4 million related to the MERS payments, then you have roughly 1.4 million there in surplus, quote, and then the the debt payments are about 860,000. So it kind of flips about 2036, I guess, when all is said and done, and I will be retired by then, but 2036, yes, the continuing board appears that we'll have, if all else being the same, it should turn on those activities.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can analogize this situation to, again, don't quote me on the years, long before I came on the board, when the board made a decision with some of the retirement benefits and what's that saved the county over the years. So I think this is another one of these turning point decisions we have to make as a board. So that's the way I'm seeing it anyways. So again, I'm trying to find everybody in my screen here. I think I just figured it out. Now I got Jerry up. Now I see Tobin. Don't see anybody else, but that's okay.
Jessica and Melissa are in the boardroom with me. We're all wearing masks because we're all trying to be whatever we need here. And I just said to both of them, I'm glad you guys are paying attention because you're young. You'll be here in 16 years. And they both, yeah, you won't. And I'm like, oh, look at this white hair. I will not be here in 16 years. There's the future of our organization sitting right here. I always tell them that.
Right.
I'll be hanging out with my grandkids then. So
There you go.
So, Tobin, I got nothing to add on this. How about yourself?
I'll just add that, Margaret, I'm glad you brought up the MERS restructuring that we did, because I remember that really flattened out those numbers year by year. Whereas before we had peaks and valleys, it was all over. And after the restructuring, it flattened that out. We can plan for that much better, I think. It helps in this scenario.
I agree.
And again, it's nice work. I like this. I like it a lot.
Okay, that was our discussion. Jerry, you can chime in on number 9 when you get there. Invoice list discussion. Tobin?
Yeah, I didn't see anything really out of the ordinary on these. Nothing stuck out to me.
No, I didn't see too much either. It's pretty much all standard expenses. Just, no, I'll handle something a little different. I had a comment on something, but I'm not gonna do it in public meeting, so nothing out of the ordinary. So, all right, does that end our invoice list discussion, Tobin?
Yep, I'm done.
All right. Margaret and Nicole, you have anything to add on those?
No, I have nothing to add on those, but before we close, I would like to thank the Finance Committee for your leadership and your support in the classification compensation study from the last couple of years particularly, and certainly through today. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I know that all of the employees of the remaining departments and the courts will appreciate it very much too. So thank you for your leadership and your support on it. I on their behalf, I appreciate it very much.
Okay, thank you. Call to the public, Jerry.
Thank you. Margaret's comment about 2036, it was in the back of my mind, looking at the longevity of males in my family. I'll be here in spirit unless I bust it. But just a couple of comments. One was already pointed out by Nicole that we did dip into the turbine revenues for this year's budget. I suppose we can replace it with general fund, but we'd have to be really disciplined going forward to make that up. And plus the budget's going to grow over the years. That is a concern of mine. Also, I looked at the jail debt, and right now we're looking at about a $41 million budget for this, bringing this project through completion. It's likely to increase from that point. It'd be nice to be able to list the projected finance amount and the percentage of the bond. It just seems like that dollar amount for the jail debt seems to be low to me from what a little bit of research that I've done. Other than that, I think Steve's done a good job on that chart. That does leave, in my mind, still a lot of challenges to finance something we clearly need, but it's a start. Thank you very much.
Nicole, is there anybody else on the line for regards to this?
There is not, Mr. Chairman. It's all of us are here on video except for Steve Krinovic, who is here, not on video. No public at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, before we adjourn, Tobin, do you have anything to add?
I do not, sir.
All right, and the chair, I do not either, so it is 11:17. I'll call the meeting adjourned. So,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone, and sorry I had to go to this phone again, but I had no idea how this even works. Hopefully I had it on me. So.
You did fine.
Now it comes up. Now I can see pictures.
There you go. Yep.
You did great.
That's what I get for doing it from my office. It's a hit and miss thing because we got, but anyway, so. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
it was nice to see
Bye-bye.
the board. It was nice to see
Yeah.
the boardroom. I haven't seen that boardroom in a while. So there you go.
I know, usually when we're Zooming, you're gonna see my dining room, so it's nice that I'm in at the boardroom. I was happy to walk into it today. It made me very happy to be back on site today, so.
Margaret, how does the recent decision by the governor opening up the numbers and stuff, does that affect our conferences at all or our board meetings at all? Or how's that going to affect us, if at all?
Well, I think that there are some things there that we need to look at, but the issue for us with the board meetings, as much as I would love to have us all in person, the problem is going to be how we can accomplish that and leave enough square footage for any